In this episode, Nelson Nash and I discuss the genesis of NNI, the Nelson Nash Institute.
Let there be light, and
Sir.
there was.
There was.
Good.
Really a couple of, words, just going back to the genesis, right?
That's the first book.
Right. Actually, it was before the first book.
Yeah.
Right. But then when you wrote the first book, Becoming Your Own Banker.
I talk about Genesis.
Oh, yeah, no question. Yeah. That's the big book. Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
In the beginning.
Yeah,
right?
That's 66 of them.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about your book.
Oh, you mean this one?
This one.
Have you read that one?
I have read that one.
All right.
And I can't tell you how many times.
Okay.
It's been pretty recent.
Mm-hmm.
Read the whole thing 3 times.
Do you know what it says?
Yeah, I do. I believe I do. I'm still searching in case I missed anything. All right. But when you created the think tank, right, and then it evolved into IBI, and now it's the Nelson Nash Institute, NNI. You didn't envision this or create this for a bunch of agents to sell a bunch of life insurance. Why did you do what you did?
Why?
Yeah.
Well, the vision that there's something wrong out there in the financial community, that banking is necessary for our existence the way that we live today. It's got to be. But the function is in the hands of the wrong people. And when you look at it in depth, you'll find that they're evil to the core. Anybody that would lend money that doesn't exist is evil.
And charge interest on it?
Yeah. And so if they understand this concept, it's real money, and it's in a place that cannot inflate the money supply. There's this real good video out there called Banking with Life. You ever seen that one?
I have.
Anyway, there's about 13 personalities in that video, including yours truly. But the third one, I believe, is a guy named Paul Cleveland, who's a good friend and Austrian economist there in Birmingham, Alabama. And he points out that money is not wealth. Money is wealth is goods and services. That money is the medium of exchange whereby we acquire wealth. And the money function out there, as I say, is in the hands of the wrong people, because all you got to do is just see what's happened during my lifetime. How the money supply has increased big time. Well, what that did was it diluted the power of the medium of exchange. Okay, I graduated from college in 1952, went on active duty with the Air Force for a couple of years because I was a ROTC student, and that was one of the ways I worked my way through college. The other way was 2 part-time jobs all the time when I was in college. All right, so anyway, do you have any idea what a second lieutenant's base pay was in 1952? $213.75 a month, every month, whether you liked it or not. Now you had $75 a month housing allowance. You had $42 food allowance. And you know we got along very well on that. That compared with everybody else, we lived rather good. Well, consider what's going on out there today. Absurd. It's increasing the money supply doesn't solve anything at all. But who calls this? Bankers. They're the only ones that can inflate the money supply. So it's in the hands of the wrong people. Well, there's real money out there and there's funny money out there. But people can't tell the difference because they're just digits to them and such. But you certainly know about this place called Tulsa, Oklahoma, where the biggest race riot ever occurred was. We're talking about what? 1922, 23, which one is
1921.
it? 1921, yeah. Yeah, there was that black community there that was relatively very wealthy. Well, it was tragic what happened there as far as the death, but the thing about it is that human beings have a tendency to fixate on the tragedy, but they don't look at the cause. Well, find out what the cause is. And the cause had to do with the fact that the 10th commandment was in effect, thou shalt not covet. Can you imagine poor white trash watching these real rich black guys living close by? Well, that led to a disaster. Yeah, but why did the black guys get rich? Money never changed the community until it turned over 30 to 100 times. All right. Let's go back to Paul Cleveland and in this great video called Banking with Life. You ought to watch that.
All right.
So wealth is goods and services. So one guy rendered a service somewhere, and what did he get as compensation?
Money.
Money. All right, that's real money, isn't it? That's a representation of something that was real wealth. So therefore, that's real money. Okay, so he's got that real money. And there's another black guy over here that's got something he'd like to sell, and it just happens that this guy would like to buy that. So they strike a deal based on the monetary denomination. All right, so the money flowed from here to this guy, and the goods flowed over here. All right, now when he's got that money, he finds somebody else, and so money never left the community until it turned over 30 to 70 times. Well, that's the secret of it all there. Well, contrast that with what goes on out there in the big wide world. You know, human beings love to have designations behind their names. You know, MD, PhD, so-and-so, CRNA, all that kind of nonsense. Well, then life insurance is Chartered Life Underwriter, CLU. Now, you got to understand something. You get in the life insurance business, and you've got to become a member of life underwriters. And if you're going to be anybody at all, you got to be head guy sometime down the way. And sometime the way there, you've got to become a CLU. Well, when I went through the course, it was 10 parts, and it took a couple of years. It was equivalent to a master's degree anywhere. And one of the books that parts was economics. And of all things, the economics book that they used was Paul Samuelson's Economics. That's the textbook that all the colleges use. And so the guy's borderline communist, good grief, if you extend what he's teaching, life insurance would cease to exist. They don't have life insurance in Russia, good grief. All right, so here I am studying that course, and I come across this idea that Samuelson's describing. He says, the government taxes the economy $10 billion. Well, that's money coming into the government. Right, James?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, the government's going to spend it, he says. And it'll turn over 3 times. And so that stimulated the economy. Well, being of the Austrian school of thought for some 62 years now, I deliberately failed that course. I've only failed one course in my life, and it was economics for CLU studies.
That's funny. I don't care who you are.
Now, I'm also pretty proud of the fact that when I was in college, the first year there's Econ 101, and I'm at a D+. That's Delta plus, not Bravo plus, okay? I'm proud of that fact, because that way I didn't have to wash so much nonsense out of my brain. All right. Anyway, so I deliberately failed the course for CLU studies. On the final examination, I said, yes, so what Samuelson said here is true, but this is also true. Al Capone, the notorious gangster, he steals $10 billion from the American public. He's going to spend it. That'll turn over 3 times. That stimulated the economy too. Therefore, we should have more Al Capones. And they didn't see any sense of humor in that at all, and they flunked me. I took the course over, gave them their answers, and they gave me a designation. And I've got a what do you call it, certificate, whatever, that is all framed and so forth, that I'm a CLU. Well, 8 years ago, getting old and stuff like that, the way we were living, there was more room and more yard to keep up with, and we needed to be doing it at our ages. We downsized, and I found that diploma. It was in a closet facing the wall. And I was going to ash can it, but David says, no, keep it. And so I hung it in my garage. So if you want to come see my CLU study, my CLU designation, come visit my garage when you come to Birmingham next time.
All right. All right. So, the Nelson Nash Institute.
Yeah.
Banking is in the wrong hands.
Yes.
The banking function.
Yes.
People don't really realize that. They've abdicated their responsibility.
Sure.
So, you create this institute, though, and you didn't do it for agents to go out and write a lot of life insurance.
No, that wasn't objective at all. There's just the means of accomplishing it. That's all. Emerson said the end pre-exists in the means. The end objective pre-exists in the means. Look to the means. Now, my mentor, Leonard Reed, quoted Emerson quite a bit, and I always liked him, but when I found out that he was highly influenced at one point with that guy from Walden Pond, what was his name? Anyway.
We're all looking around the room.
Yeah.
Walden Pond.
Yeah, Walden Pond. Yeah, I can't think of his name right now, but anyway, those guys were the guys that caused the War of Northern Aggression. And so I have a hard time quoting Emerson as a result. But no, he was a good guy, but, every once in a while people do get led astray, and that's not good.
Right.
Yeah. But anyway, life insurance companies, it's impossible for them to increase the money supply. It can't be done. All right, so I meet this guy named James Neathery, and he convinced me that buying life insurance is a pretty good idea. Well, I signed my name on the dotted line, and I get examined and stuff like that, and policy is issued. What am I going to have to give him?
Money.
What kind of money?
Cash.
Real money. Something that I've earned out there for goods and services of some kind or another. All right, now James is going to earn something for his efforts there. That's real money that you got, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now most of it is going to the life insurance company. It is real money. Well, they've got to pay their hired help. You can't run any business that admin stuff. It's impossible. That's real money to them. Well, most of it is going to build things that like come downtown Birmingham and Fifth Avenue and 20th Street is a civic center of Birmingham. There are 4 buildings there, and 3 out of 4 are either owned or totally financed by Equitable Life. That's real money. Am I right?
Yes.
All right. Now, how do they recover that investment? Well, they provide office space and so forth. Well, what's people got to give them?
Real money.
Real money. All right. So you see, if we get this thought across to enough people out there, that they can learn how to secede from the system. You don't have to change it top down. It can't be done top down. It's impossible because the folks that created all the inflation and so forth, bankers, have been poisoning the minds of people for such a long period of time. It's not going to happen. But in that community, you can, I conjured up this phrase, James, how to, IBC is how to survive in a hostile financial environment. And one of our practitioners modified it. He says, no, how to survive, and thrive, in a hostile financial environment. So, you see, this is work in progress, and people are adding to it all the time.
So you're pretty pleased with the execution, the structure, the activity of NNI, and what's going on there, as far as training agents in Austrian economics, and what you discovered what you could do with life insurance and the structure. And
well, when I figured all this out about 35 years plus ago, I saw that this had to be taught out there, and it can't be taught top down. I tried that tack, and it was a miserable failure. And I thought academia was a way to get it taught, and that was even worse. And so I saw that it had to be done down at the UNME level, and I also saw that that I'm not going to live forever. That I needed to find people that would grasp this and take the baton and go. And I had a couple of abortions there with people that had real good minds and so forth, but had problem with direction. You ever heard the term vector?
yes.
Vector is the force in a direction. Without both qualities, you don't have a vector. Okay? So to illustrate, I'm an airplane driver. And so here's the airline pilot with his load of passengers, and he says, about halfway through the trip, says, folks, I have some good news and bad news. Says the good news is that we're making good time, but the bad news is we've lost our course.
They're going to get somewhere they didn't mean to go pretty quick.
Yeah. And so that was a real big blow and so forth. Well, as time went by, here was this guy named Carlos Lara that got interested in this, and he didn't catch on immediately. It took a while, in which he readily admits. But I guess he's got the most thorough understanding of this of anybody I know. And I've always tried to get this across to my Austrian friends, but they're too busy with whatever they were pursuing, and I never could get their attention at all. And Carlos Lara, somehow or another, got up with a guy named Bob Murphy that lived there in Nashville, Tennessee. And how they got together is an interesting story in itself that we don't have time to pursue right now. But anyway, it was Carlos that convinced Bob that he had to read my book. And Bob says that he'd read the book. He says, well, he's right about everything, but there's 10 things that he's missing and so forth. So he reread the book, and he said, no, there's only 9 that he's missing. And he finally got down to it wasn't anything. So
it was him.
It's a funny story. It's a funny story the way Bob tells it. Well, we'll never get the mission done without the intellectual community. That's all there is to it. And Bob Murphy is the key to it. If there's anybody that understands it totally, it's Bob Murphy out there. And he's the key to the intellectual community. Well, fortunately, my youngest daughter married well, a guy named David Stearns. And, of course, he wasn't all that enthused about buying life insurance when he first married my daughter, but that was the only way it would get done. So he was slow to learn it too, but there's no better practitioner of the concept out there than David Stearns. And so if there's anything that gives me real joy at this late stage in life today is that those 3 guys are everything I ever dreamed of. So the future is in great hands, and there's great practitioners out there that life is good.
Life is good. So it's going in the right direction. The delta is correct.
See?
Right? That's good.
Did we talk about that?
Well, we didn't use the word revolution and moving money from. But
it is a revolution to individuals, but not the masses will never catch on to this. They'll never catch on to this. You see, they're so indoctrinated by the banking community that when you try to describe something like this, they think you're crazy. I see, when I first saw this vision, it was kind of an instantaneous thing. And I tried to suppress it for 2 years because I said nobody would believe me. And I can make a real good living just selling life insurance and teaching individual clients and so forth, and that would be it. But the fire would not go out. I know what that burning bush of Moses is all about. That this had to be taught big time. And so I started teaching it to individuals, small groups. Well, the conference room that I used mostly held 18 people. And I was trying to get it done in 2.5 hours' time, but it was going over everybody's head. And fortunately, I had this experience years ago that with a guy named Larry Wilson Learning Corporation. He was the guy who created Council of Selling. He was a school teacher, had a real bad habit of spending 1.25 times income.
Was he a doctor?
Huh?
I'm kidding. Was he a doctor?
No. Anyway, he had to get another occupation, got in life insurance business, did extremely well. But it bugged him. He couldn't explain why was he good. He called himself an unconscious competent. And although he had 4 children at the time, he decided that he was going to find out why. So he took off a year and says, I will find out why am I good. And when you start searching, the answers appear as if by magic. You gotta wanna is the thing it amounts to. And he found that the answers were there pretty much for the asking, but he also ran into something else. It's called synergism. He ran across the path of Bank of America, who was looking for someone to create a sales training package for their bank. And that's how Council of Selling was born. It was a 40-hour block of instruction designed to be put on 4 hours at a time over a 10-week period of time. anyway, we became very good friends and such. And my partner in the life insurance business back in those days with Equitable, Lamar Phillips, we used to put it on for the general public and such and such. So based on that experience, I saw that I was making a big mistake of trying to get this in a package of 2.5 hours. And so I rewrote the course. And I just put it into 5 parts and designed to be put on 2 hours at a time over a 5-week period. And then I got a group of 18 people. The oldest one was 75, the youngest one was 25, males, females, all different kind of occupations and such. I wouldn't let but one life insurance guy in the room. All right. At the end of the first session there, but 60% of them hung around and wanted to ask questions. And I told them, go home. It's over. I'll be here Thursday night, 6 o'clock next week. And I deliberately did not call a one. I wanted to see what would happen. 20 people showed up. Wasn't the same 18 people. But others said, you got to hear this. And by the third session, they were all saying, you need to write a book. You need to write a book. Now, you're too young to remember Paul Harvey, aren't you?
No, I remember.
Oh, okay. Well, now you know the rest of the story.
Yeah.
That's how the book came to be.
So then you had a bunch of financial professionals and agents say, Nelson, we want to do this too. And how did, the think tank develop out?
Well, I had been putting on the seminars before the book came out for quite some time, I guess for at least 4 years. I was using overhead projectors and box of slides and so forth, and stuff like that. And anyway, this guy up in Iowa that said, you need to know Kim Butler in Phoenix, Arizona. I didn't know her. She didn't know me. Anyway, I looked around for somebody to introduce me, and nobody ever couldn't find anybody. Finally, I gave up and just called her. She wasn't in. She returned my call, and I wasn't in. We played tag for probably 5 sessions before we finally got together. Anyway, I was early one morning. I was out in the yard puttering around, and Mary yells at me, the telephone. Kim Butler's on the phone. And I introduced myself and said, I wrote this book, the manuscript. I'm going to send it to you. I'd like to see what you think of it. Anyway, she said, I've been looking for this for years and such. So anyway, my wife and I had been working with Dr. Clarence Carson on publishing books and so forth. Carson was my number 2 man. Leonard Reed was Foundation for Economic Education was my head guy, but the number 2 man was Clarence Carson, a historian there in Alabama. He wrote history from an economic point of view, financial point of view. Well, economic point of view, mostly. Anyway, we worked with him for something like 22 years. And so it was the influence that I got from him about how to publish books and so forth. So we knew how to self-publish. And we knew something about ordering books and such. And so how many did they order from this printer that we'd been using for Clarence? And Mary said 500, that'll last forever. Anyway, so when I went out to do the seminar for Kim Butler, she bought 100 copies immediately. So I had placed an order for 2,000. Mary said, "You've gone nuts." And so I called him and said, add another 1,000. So I said, well, the book's done rather well. It's in 31 countries and changed the lives of lots and lots of people. So
most of them you'll never meet.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. But it's pretty gratifying to have them call and say, "You changed my life." I said, "No, I didn't change your life. You saw something of value and you changed."
Right.
Without you, it didn't happen. That back then, my North Carolina days when I was a forester, at one time I was president of the Chamber of Commerce. Well, that meant that I got to select the speaker for the annual meeting. Well, being an airplane driver, I picked William Piper Aircraft Company. He's about 82 years old at that time, and I was about 30. I mean, what an experience to spend you and me time with a guy like that. So, anyway, we had fun just visiting, but one of the messages he got across to our group was, he says, "You have a telephone. Big deal. If somebody else doesn't have a telephone, you don't have a thing." All right, what's the message? You may have the best message in the world. You may have the best delivery system in the world. You may have the best technique in the world. But if you don't have a receptive listener, you don't have a thing. So the magic out there is that people see this vision and catch on. Guys like James Neathery.
Thank you for saying my name. You can throw that around all you want.
It's all right.
Yeah, it's okay. I've come to learn that, it's really, the message is really ultimately freedom and controlling the banking.
Sure, absolutely.
The means is just the life insurance structure, correct?
It's the only thing that meets it's the perfect solution. But people don't realize that because, you see, they've been concentrating totally on the death benefit. And then of all things that after the advent of World War II, here comes all these GIs off of active duty. And the socialists that were in charge at that time said, "Oh, that's going to ruin the economy." Well, it wasn't true, but, they were running the show. They said, "We got to give them something to do so that they'll work their way into the economy over a period of time. And so let's send them to college. Not only that, we will solve another problem. We'll increase the intellectual capital, and so we'll kill two birds with one stone." GI Bill, greatest thing that ever happened. Well, what happened was 180 degrees opposite. Tom DiLorenzo, who's is a good friend, we're first name basis, big time. He points out that there was a totally opposite result. That colleges became diploma mills. And today we have people out there that have college diplomas that can't read the diploma.
All right.
So those Harvard MBAs that came out that has created an atmosphere of, I guess you might call it a pecking order or something like that. But these are the folks that become the big time bankers, whatnot, that increase the money supply and so forth. And that's evil. But people don't recognize evil. You got to recognize what evil looks like. You got to recognize the devil is a wily creature. Unless you understand what he looks like, you won't recognize him. So the means here is a place that cannot inflate the money supply. And if you had this closed community that life insurance creates, it's always increasing in value. Everybody should be doing this sort of thing, but that's incomprehensible to most people. I don't know whether it'll ever happen or not, but it doesn't matter whether it happens or not. You don't have to live that way. Again, how to survive and thrive in a hostile financial environment. Yeah. That you can't describe the joy and peace of mind that comes from having the banks out of your life. You know, I've done seminars for folks like you all over the country for the last 20 years plus. See, I'd been doing the seminars way before the book ever came out. Anyway, years ago, I was doing a seminar for this guy in Thousand Oaks region of Los Angeles, high rent district. Oh, by the way, that's another lie out there. There's not 1,000 Oaks. I counted them on Forrester. There's only 976.
Right.
Anyway, the sponsor was Arkady Milgram, a Russian Jew that came here in about 1989, I guess it was, something like that. He was able to get out of Russia, but with only $100 in his pocket. That's all he could take out. Yeah. Done extremely well. Never discovered the life insurance business until about 8 years ago now. He had 25 Russians there, about 20 of us USA types. And halfway through the seminar, I'm telling people what a peaceful, stress-free way of life it is when you get the banks out of your life. And a bolt of lightning hit my feeble brain about that time. God is good, I'll tell you. I said to myself, my word, what an opportunity. Right there in front of me on the front row is a lady doctor from Russia, a neurologist. I'm going to pick her brain right in front of everybody, and I have no earthly idea what that woman's going to say. I'm going to take a chance. Doctor, what part does stress play in medical maladies? Her response, it all starts there. So I asked the group, in your life, and the life of your peers, what do you see as the biggest stress factor? A chorus came back. Money. This is how to totally control the money factor in your life. In a place that cannot inflate it. But you got to get across the message to the next generation. Well, what are they exposed to out there?
Noise.
Yeah, the hostile environment, big time. So you got to be patient with them and so forth, and you got to fake. Okay, there's some people that will never catch on, and you can't help it. But you just have to recognize that you can't force feed this sort of stuff. You can't inject it into their brains. They have to catch it. They have to be fertile soil, receptive to superior seeds. Now, when you do this sort of stuff out there, you're going to run into some superior people. And lots of them that I'm talking about there. With all the books that you've read, good grief. Can you imagine what it was like to have Leonard Reed as your personal friend and mentor? And sit and jaw with him like this and such, and that you could pick up the phone and call him, and if he didn't have something pressing, that he would take time and talk to you, and so forth. I mean, God.
I think I'm as close to that as any living man today could be.
Yeah. Okay.
I got your phone number.
Well. All I'm doing is gathering seeds and trying to find fertile soil in which to plant them. That's all.
Right.
But you got to understand that you plant the superior seeds in fertile soil, but you're also going to get weeds. And you got to recognize weeds. Well, if you get rid of the dang weeds, doesn't the superior stuff stand out like a sore thumb? Well, how complicated can this be? Good Lord. But therein lies the problem. People love to complicate things, don't they? Well, why? I don't understand.
So you think the the practitioners at the NNI will be able to continue to carry the message to the next generation?
I have high hopes. We've seen some very, very good candidates that have come along. We made a big mistake when we first formed the IBI. We had it open to anybody that wanted to. But, I've been singing in choirs for 75 years and so forth. I had to quit here recently. That's been real painful for me to do that, doggone it. But our minister of music at our church is one of those very, very outstanding people. He's the head of the School of Fine Arts at Samford University. Anyway, here's this pianist that's been with us for quite some time. He was a very young fellow. And he's coming along very well. Well, he wanted to go to the next level. Well, in order to do so, he had to meet with say 5 people in the Department of Fine Arts there to go through an interview to determine whether he was a candidate or not. And so I suggested to Carlos, Bob, and David that that's what we should do. And so we adopted that immediately. And we won't even let anybody go through the course until they've gone through a 30 to maybe an hour interview to find out what motivates you, what you want to do this for, so forth. And we've had to turn down some folks that they just won't fit.
What a shame.
So, as a result, the candidates are getting better and better, and some in the relatively recent past are spectacular. I mean, gosh, I wish I could live a few more years to see the results of them.
Right.
Yeah.
He'll be on film in a minute. So there's the interview process. They have to do the coursework, Austrian economics, and then there's some education on life insurance that they didn't get from the home office or any of the insurance companies, because this wasn't created by the insurance companies. It was discovered by you, sir.
Mm-hmm. I saw something that they were leaving out and so forth. You see, the heck of it, going back to those Harvard MBAs, as a result of it, all home offices of life insurance companies decided that they had to be everything to everybody. And there's no way that that's not, they don't understand the power of what they really have. They don't understand that what can be done with this thought process. Well, some of them are beginning to catch on out there today, and that's a glorious feeling, but it's not an overnight process with them, because they got to weed out a lot of old kind of thinking that they had there that dominates everything.
It's pretty difficult to unlearn.
The hardest job in the world is to unlearn.
Thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed the content, leave us a like or a thumbs up, share us with your friends, give us some feedback, and we'll see you next time.